Number 1. The underground prodigy. The weight of the crown. The brain that built the foundation. Let's kick off this massive list with the absolute bedrock of this entire phenomenon. The man without whom this group literally wouldn't exist. The leader who carried the weight of a struggling company and 7 anxious teenagers on his shoulders. Kim Namjoon, better known to the world as RM. Imagine being just a teenager, 15 or 16 years old, grinding in the gritty, fiercely competitive underground hip-hop scene of Seoul, under the moniker Runch Ronda, spitting raw verses and battling older, more experienced rappers, completely unaware that your sharp intellect and undeniable flow were about to catch the eye of a visionary producer named Bang Si-hyuk. When Bang PD first heard RM rap, he was so utterly blown away by the depth, the philosophical edge, and the sheer societal critique embedded in the lyrics of a mere teenager that he decided right then and there to build a hip-hop
7 underdogs, a crushing mountain of debt, a shattered dream, a spectacular global conquest. What's up, pop culture geeks and music lovers? Have you ever looked at a massive, sold-out stadium bursting with an endless sea of glowing purple lights and just paused to wonder, how on earth did 7 ordinary boys from a nearly bankrupt no-name agency in South Korea completely flip the global music industry upside down? We're not just talking about a lucky hit, a viral dance craze, or a passing TikTok trend here, guys. We are diving deep into a literal cultural tsunami that broke the rigid barriers of language, race, and Western prejudice. How did they survive the brutal, cutthroat K-pop machine when the odds were completely stacked against them from day one? What is the actual secret ingredient that makes millions of people across the globe feel so intensely connected to their lyrics, crying and healing through their music as if they personally know them? Are they just another perfectly manufactured boy band? Or are they a once-in-a-lifetime musical anomaly that defied every rule in the book? Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and buckle up, because we are about to decode the ultimate, mind-blowing success formula of BTS in this epic breakdown. Tell me when you are ready for the first point.
Number 2. The starving artist. The shattered shoulder. The unapologetic flame of August D. Did you honestly believe that climbing to the absolute pinnacle of global music was just a simple matter of flashy smiles and perfectly manufactured pop hooks? What actually happens when a dream is so fierce and consuming that a teenager literally has to choose between paying for a bus ticket home or buying a cheap bowl of black bean noodles just to survive the freezing night? How does a desperately starving kid from the unforgiving streets who secretly shattered his shoulder in a brutal accident while delivering food miraculously transform into a universally feared and respected musical genius who single-handedly redefines the global charts? Let me take you deep into the gritty, unapologetic, and incredibly tear-jerking reality of Min Yoongi, widely known as Suga, the man who injected the raw, bleeding soul into the beating heart of BTS. Because his life story is not some heavily sanitized corporate fairy tale, but rather a brutal, blood-pumping survival thriller that will leave you absolutely speechless. Long before the sold-out stadium tours, the blinding camera flashes, and the unprecedented Grammy nominations, Yoongi was just a heavily struggling, deeply marginalized underground beatmaker operating under the moniker Gloss, hustling.
Number 3. The underground street king. The sacrificial sunshine. The beating heart of the stage. Let's turn the spotlight onto the absolute, undisputed anchor of their mesmerizing, world-shattering performances. The man who quite literally breathes life, unparalleled energy, and agonizing perfectionism into the very veins of this 7-headed dragon, Hyun Hoseok, universally adored and feared as J-Hope. Before the blinding stadium light. Number 4. The reluctant visual, the silver voice, the silent pillar of epiphany. Let's turn the blazing spotlight onto the quiet, deeply profound, and incredibly sacrificial anchor of the group, Kim Seok-jin, universally known as Jin, a man whose breathtakingly handsome face initially masked one of the most astonishingly relentless underdog stories in the entire history of modern pop music. Imagine walking down the street as a normal, everyday university student, diligently studying the complex nuances of acting at the highly prestigious Jungkook University with absolute dreams of becoming a dramatic film actor, only to be suddenly randomly scouted off a public bus simply because a casting director was completely mesmerized by your insanely perfect, unearthly facial features. When Jin first stepped through the terrifyingly intimidating doors of the cramped, heavily indebted big hit entertainment studio, he was instantly surrounded by ferocious, deeply passionate musical prodigies who had been fiercely rapping, producing, and aggressively street dancing for their entire lives, while he possessed.
Number 5. The contemporary prodigy, the angelic falsetto, the unyielding perfectionist of Busan. Let's shift our intense focus to the mesmerizing, impossibly ethereal, and fiercely captivating force of nature who entirely redefined the global standard for male performance, the incredibly stunning and agonizingly hard-working Park Jimin, a man whose seemingly delicate, angelic exterior completely masks one of the most terrifyingly ruthless work ethics and unbreakable spirits in the entire history of the entertainment industry. Before he was universally crowned as the undisputed, record-shattering global it boy of modern pop culture, Jimin was just a phenomenally gifted, highly ambitious teenager living in the coastal city of Busan, where his sheer, undeniable genius in classical and contemporary dance earned him the extremely prestigious, highly coveted title of top student in the modern dance department at the renowned Busan High School of Arts, a monumental achievement that proved his physical body was literally built to speak the profound, deeply emotional language of movement. Yet, when he finally made the terrifying, life-altering leap to join the struggling big-hit entertainment in Seoul, he was suddenly, violently thrust into a chaotic, fiercely aggressive hip-hop environment where his elegant, beautifully fluid contemporary style was heavily criticized and entirely useless against the hard-hitting, fiercely rhythmic popping and locking required for traditional K-pop, making him feel completely alienated and severely inadequate compared to seasoned street dancers like J-Hope. What most casual listeners and newly minted fans completely fail to realize is that Jimin had the absolute shortest trainee period of all the members, arriving a mere 6 months before their official, highly anticipated debut, which meant he was brutally forced to compress years of grueling vocal and dance training into a completely suffocating, impossibly tiny window of time, leading to an unprecedented level of crushing psychological pressure and intense physical exhaustion that would have absolutely unquestionably destroyed a weaker person. The terrifying, heartbreaking reality of his early, agonizing trainee days is heavily shrouded in silent tears and sheer, unadulterated desperation. Jimin was actually almost entirely kicked out of the final BTS debut lineup a staggering 8 different times, constantly facing the crushing, intensely humiliating threat of being sent packing back to Busan, because the top company executives genuinely, heavily doubted whether his unique, incredibly high-pitched, almost androgynous vocal tone and his drastically different classical dance background could seamlessly blend into a hardcore, heavily aggressive hip-hop boy band concept. Can you even begin to imagine the immense, paralyzing terror of waking up every single morning genuinely believing it could be your very last day living your own dream? Frantically practicing in the dark, freezing studio until your muscles completely gave out and you were literally coughing up blood, sleeping a mere 2 hours a night on the hard, unforgiving practice room floor, just to furiously drill the exact same incredibly complex choreography thousands upon thousands of times until your body simply moved on pure, desperate instinct. Instead of completely giving up and allowing the massive, crushing weight of industry expectations to shadow his spirit, Jimin violently fought back with a level of sheer, terrifying obsession and uncompromising perfectionism that genuinely frightened his own group members, notoriously engaging in highly dangerous, extremely brutal diets during the legendary Blood, Sweat, and Tears era, where he would tragically starve himself for days on end, surviving on incredibly minimal, dangerously low food intakes, just to achieve the sharp, heavily sculpted, completely unrealistic visual standards demanded by the brutally unforgiving, highly toxic K-pop industry. This harrowing. Number 6. The hidden weapon, the soulful baritone, the eccentric maverick of Daegu. Let us turn the blazing spotlight onto the impossibly stunning, intensely enigmatic, and profoundly soulful artistic maverick of the group, Kim Tae-young, universally celebrated across the globe under his iconic stage name V, a man whose astonishing, heavily unprecedented journey from a humble, dirt-poor farming village to the absolute dazzling pinnacle of global superstardom reads exactly like a wildly unbelievable, heavily dramatized cinematic masterpiece that simply defies all bounds of logical reality. Long before the blinding, deafening stadium tours and the prestigious luxury fashion ambassadorships, Tae-young was just an incredibly innocent, deeply imaginative child running freely through the quiet, heavily agricultural fields of Gyeochang, raised almost entirely by his beloved, deeply cherished grandmother, who instilled in him a profound, incredibly beautiful sense of empathy and a fiercely gentle heart. Believing that any successful singer must absolutely know